Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm Jeja Flazanes, your empowerment strategist and producer. Thank you for downloading today's episode. Today, we're going to talk about sunscreen and skin cancer. I've been wanting to do a show on this for a while. It's been a long time since I've had this conversation at all, but we needed an upgrade. And especially now when it's summer for us here, and for some of you, you live in sun all year long, or some of you who are just living in sun temporarily, this is a conversation that's probably in the front of your mind because it's the conversation of whether you should be wearing sunscreen or not, and if it does anything, and what else contributes. So I'm excited to share with you today's show. Before I tell you about Dr. Erin, though, there are two announcements. And the first one is that in the show, she talks about a healthy fats handout. So I have that. And if you're interested in that handout, you're going to go to jejaflazanes.com/healthy fats, and you can download her handout. The second announcement is that I have opened up a beta test group coaching program. It's for only 6 people, and there are some spaces left. It starts in September. And this beta group program is like a deep dive immersion. And for those of you that have done some individual sessions, or maybe you have some therapy, or even if you go to a group coaching, group counseling session, this takes it to like the next level. It's a super connected, intimate, trusting group of people that end up getting to know each other and seeing and hearing each other and supporting each other on a level that I would probably bet you've never had before. And I only say that because I haven't had it before. And as I've created the Empowerment Strategist certification and seen that happen twice, I keep seeing how these smaller groups that are all studying the same material, they're all doing the same work on themselves, and they're able to help each other and reflect back to and be mirrors. It's just super powerful. And I want to try it out in a 3-month forum that's just a super deep dive. So if you've done some work, but you feel like there's a lot more to do and you haven't really broken some of your patterns yet, and you want support around that, it's a beta because it won't be this. It will be more expensive next time. It will be more. This is me giving it a test to see if 3 months is enough for this format. And because of that, there's a little bit of a deal to get in. So if this sounds like something that might be of interest to you, there's no commitment. Just reach out to me, jejaflazanes.com. We jump on a Zoom call. We see if it's a fit. I send you the information. It's a yes or it's a no. There's only 6 people. We start in September. So I'd love for you to consider it if you're ready to really make a quantum shift in your healing. I see it every time. It's just amazing and life-changing. And I'd love to share it with you. So if you want to be a part of the beta 3-month deep dive immersion, which isn't probably even going to be the name, but it's what we're going to call it right now, go ahead and reach out to me, jejaflazanes.com, and let's jump on a Zoom call. Now, about today's show. So in 25 years of practice as a naturopathic physician, Dr. Erin has helped thousands of individuals overcome chronic illness and optimize their lives. In her clinical work, Dr. Erin is focused on our emotional relationship to disease. She has studied and practiced Heartfulness Meditation since 1992 and has been serving as a volunteer trainer of this method since 2008. Since 2015, Dr. Erin's focus has shifted to working with cancer, expanding on the work of Dr. Nasha Winters. Coupling Winters' metabolic approach to cancer with her own unique contributions to medicine, patients are making profound shifts and halting this overwhelming disease. Dr. Erin envisions the future of human health and well-being as the evolution of the individual and collective consciousness. She is actively working to support this profound shift by expanding Options Naturopathic from clinic to broad repository of natural medicine resources, and by spreading the word of these methods through her writing and teaching. You can learn more about Dr. Erin at optionsnaturopathic.com. Don't forget, you can get her Healthy Fats handout at jejaflazanes.com/healthy fats. And I hope you enjoy today's episode. Welcome, everyone, to today's show. If you're finding this on YouTube, know this is a podcast. You can also download it below this video. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Take it with you while you're walking, exercising, driving, cooking, cleaning, all the fun things.
If you were listening to this on the podcast, no, we did a video. You can meet Dr. Erin by coming over to jjflizanes.tv. Just wanted to give a shout out that because of the content that we're going to cover today, in case you were searching it, and again, you found me on YouTube and you don't know me, this is my show. I'm an empowerment strategist, which means I'm not a host. I will be talking. I will be having things to say. I have an opinion. I have a point of view. So if you don't like me, that is totally cool. Where can they get more of just you, Dr. Erin, if they just want to hear you?
If they want to hear more of me, absolutely. I have a website, Options Naturopathic.com, just how it sounds, nature with an O and pathic at the end.com, or you can Google me, Erin Singh, ND, Erin Holston Singh is my whole name. Those are really the easiest ways to find me. There's not too many Erin Holston Singhs in the world, I don't think. So I'll come right up.
Excellent. Okay. So today's conversation is going to be about sort of the looming, like I'm doing this in the summertime because of the conversation of skin cancer, sunscreen, vitamin D, toxicity, blocking, sun blockers versus cancer producing. I've done one show in the past with a former doctor, Elizabeth Plord, and she's a researcher, and we did a whole thing on sunscreen causing skin cancer, causing cancer. Right. So, but that was back in 2000 and maybe 14 or 15 that we did that show. And even though it's the information, I'm sure is still relevant and applicable, I'm in a new place with what I understand and know, and with what certain people I'm sure we talked about vitamin D on that show, but now being a little bit more involved in the cancer world than I was then, I definitely, and still seeing people on social media, they're talking about put your sunscreen on, you're going to get cancer. So you were the go-to person that Nasha had said to talk to about skin cancer. So before we get to the topic at hand, let's just back up for a second and share a little bit about your story and how we got here to you and your career and what you're choosing to focus on.
Yeah. So I am absolutely a seeker and a thinker and a questioner. And that doesn't make sense. What about, and kind of all that started when I was a kid, because probably I always bring my mother into the story. My mother's mother died when she was 8 years old. And I was aware of that as a child. And as I grew older, I was the youngest of 4, and just sort of noticed that my mom wasn't really parenting me the way other parents did. I was kind of like, what happened? What happened when her mom died? I thought about that a lot. And then crazy thing happened when I was 15. She had a really severe acute flu-like, of course, today we'd call it COVID. She had COVID back in 1985. And she suddenly couldn't remember how to do anything. And we were like, what the hell's going on? Now, my mom was a single mom raising 4 kids. My dad's mother stepped in, took her to the hospital, took her to our pediatrician that she'd worked for many years. And they put her in the psych ward and diagnosed her as a schizophrenic. So that went on for 2 years, the bulk of my high school. And let me tell you, I was dazed, confused, stressed. And then we came to find out, we took her to see somebody else who looked at her whole history, more of a historical, true history taking. This little German man, I'll never forget him, looked at samples of her handwriting from prior to this event and post, and, the history of that illness that nobody had ever paid any attention to that launched the whole thing. And he said, I think she had a case of encephalitis and she has brain damage from that. But then, the story continues, and she continued to have degenerative brain disease. Needless to say, we got her off of all of the stupid, trazodone and heavy duty antipsychotics that they had put her on, 2 of which were contraindicated to be on at the same time. You can imagine as a teenager, I was just livid against the system, and I'm like, by the time, I was in college, I had studied some of natural medicine. And then I went off to Africa and realized, I'm going to do this for real. I'm going to study why is it better to use natural medicine? And because I'd had that history, I wanted the answers. And, even though Nasha and I paralleled each other by, just a couple of years in naturopathic school, I never knew who she was until 2016, because she went to a different school. She was a couple years behind me. I had a different mentor when I first graduated out of France, who really focused on mind, body, soul, spirituality, emotional relationships to disease, looking at all the holistic schools of thought in the world, Chinese medicine, anthroposophical medicine, Rudolf Steiner's work, homeopathy, huge in homeopathy. And the French definitely are a bit ahead around homeopathy anyway, because they are not stuck on this single remedy. Dr. Gagnon used to call it, they say they had single brain cells. In France, they call them unices because they use one remedy at a time. And he would say it's because they had one brain cell. Because he's like, come on, that was for 200 years ago when homeopathy was discovered. Today, there's so many toxicants, there's so much stimuli, we have to expand this concept. And it's really just energy medicine anyway. If you know anything about homeopathy, it's vibration, you're canceling out remedies. So anyway, Dr. Gagnon was an earlier mentor and taught me so much about the relationship between mind-body medicine and detoxification and drainage. And irony of ironies, he actually died of cancer in 2009. And then, I kind of floundered for a few years. And then I was looking, and I randomly found Nasha when I was doing some online courses with preventive medical education, Dr. Lynn Patrick's programming for physicians, excellent content. And here's Nasha. And I'm like, who's this woman? She's figured something out. She's got the answers to the questions I haven't been able to find yet. So I started, stalking her. She's like, here's my email address. I would send her emails and she would write me back, sometimes a great answer, sometimes a cryptic answer. Oh, my book's coming out. The book comes out. There's nothing about blood work in the book. I'm like, what are the reference ranges you're talking about? So anyway, needless to say, over, from 2015, 16 until she cut me off because she's dealing with the newer doctor she's training, I did over 100 one-on-one consults with her on cancer patients. Basically just set it up to say, here's this person who, had cancer 3 times by the time she was 20 years old, terminal, and meandered her way out of that situation with a analytical medical mind. And she's figured it out, and I'm learning from her, and you can learn from her. Let's do this together. And everybody went for it. So did, countless ones of those. And then of course, I ended up seeing her, meeting her in person. We became very good friends. And because we think alike, naturopathic doctors have this philosophy that is so just disregarded in the rest of the world. So that's huge with everybody I talk to, is understanding how we heal and a therapeutic philosophy. So that's a long story, but that's my story.
Well, I come from functional medicine world also, and always been the seeker too. So I get that, and answering the questions, and always, especially in the personal training world, even, I take it back to looking at knee problems and saying, when different osteopaths or different, I'm thinking different physicians in the field of biomechanics and physiology would look at, let's say, reconstructing a knee because someone has knee pain. Well, the knee is a joint in between 2 ball joints. It's a hinge joint. It only goes really 2 ways. The ligaments are supposed to stop it from rotating, right? So if you have a problem in your knee joint, and fixing the knee is not going to necessarily not bring it back. This is not the root of the issue. And then, of course, moving from that and back pain into what's the emotional connection to any of this stuff? Noticing that people with back pain, had a common personality or common control issues or a lot of repressed anger. And then now moving into the cancer space with Nasha, even more noticing the different cancers of the body and the commonalities of their emotional journeys, of their emotional stories, of how they heal, how they respond to some of the work, how some don't respond to some of the work, what they need. So it's just been a very interesting topic and conversation. I didn't know how I would do with it. I'm doing better now, especially since right now breast cancer is I got the breast cancer down. We're good there. Some of the other cancers that I have that are kind of I'm not there yet.
In terms of the emotional relationship, you mean?
In terms of the healability, in terms of the space that someone needs to understand if they're ready to if they're working with me, they already understand that the emotions are a huge part of that.
Right.
Whether or not they're willing to make change is a different story. And right. I've noticed anyone with a lower jowl cancer normally has such deep-rooted anger and resentment that are often not willing to let go of it.
Yeah.
And so the terminal diagnosis comes true more in so far. And I have a very short experience with this, but it tends to be if it's lower, you have to really be ready to hear different things, to really be different choices, not just the protocol that you guys do, but the emotional choices, the letting go of control, the surrendering. Usually none of them want to surrender because they're such control freaks.
And that's really, bringing up Dr. Nasha and like the way that I work with cancer and my clinic works with cancer. Like we don't do protocols, period. So there is no protocol for any kind of cancer. So of course there's the standard of care, and that's part of what gets us in trouble because, you can't take a non-homogeneous set of human beings, homogeneity, meaning we're all the same, and apply the same therapy for all of those people, even if they're all triple negative breast cancers. We're looking specifically at the different drivers and then, yes, the different emotional components. And while there might be those overlaps in women with breast cancer, there's still a lot of diversity that happens within even a single kind of theme. And we'll see that too with skin cancer. So for me, it's really diving deep into every patient, no matter what their ailment, no matter what their cancer, what's the fundamental thing? What's the fundamental misconception? What's the false belief? What's the limiting belief? How do we go there? And how do we feel into what's not been felt? How do we lean into it? Because the only thing that's ever going to shift it is when you go there, and it may be scary as shit. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear.
You are.
Or, great.
Yes, so, you can say whatever you want.
Yes, great. But, a lot of times some people are just so suppressed because they've learned that from their parents, or it's just too much. They just can't go, or maybe they have PTSD, or, there was some incident that they have like an existential terror around. And that's really where the homeopathy piece comes in too. Like we do Gagno's work now, the way that he prescribed homeopathy in what we would call a pluralistic method, where you're cycling through remedies and you're using different animal remedies, different plant remedies, different mineral remedies, more plants than anything else, I should say, because they're softer and gentler, and humans are meant to interact and eat plants. Dr. Gagno's methodology is what I've been doing with patients for over 20 years. And it's just profoundly effective for people with any kind of mental, emotional complaint. And we're actually making it available to non-patients by filling out questionnaires and doing it. And then we offer other supports for them. We call it mind, body, temperament balancing, because temperament's all about your behavior and how you react to the world around you emotionally. So fundamental to everything.
Oh, everything. Absolutely. Oh yeah. Well, it's my number one. I mean, I'm still, regardless of any of the sciences, if the container is tainted with anger and resentment, then your body can't do what it's supposed to do, which is to heal. So it's like being in alignment emotionally and spiritually will do most of the work for you. And then you can help with the other things, which is why the homeopathic stuff, I've been doing homeopathy for years. I've worked at the clinic in Redondo Beach with Jeannie Peters and Dr. Alan Peters, and they've done homeopathy for years. So it's one of my go-to things. Love it. I mean, in fact, my purse, I have to laugh every time I go anywhere. My purse is full of homeopathy. Like there's more homeopathy in it than anything else. So it's almost like a little tote bag of homeopathy. I'm at a restaurant pulling out a remedy. Oh, here, let me give you some arnica. Here, so that hurts. Okay. So today's topic let's move into, because it's funny that with my book, those of you that are watching this on video, or those that know, I have this book called Messages from the Body. And while there's a lot of cancer in the book, and it talks about different kinds of cancers and some of the root emotional sort of sticking points, if you will, and cancer as a whole, as a general, but there's like a lot under that. There's nothing in here about skin cancer. So I know you have a book. What is it? Before we get to like skin cancer and all of the things that I want to know, learn, and help others to understand, because it's that difference of, do I use it? Do I not use sunscreen? How long, how often, when, what kind? Is it going to cause, I know that most of the crap stuff on the market's crap, and we shouldn't be using it not only for our bodies, but also for the earth, right? So then it becomes, at what point in the types of skin, like, oh my gosh, in Greece, Nasha and Chris, I mean, they all bake, and they're baking all day long, and they don't put anything on. And I never see them get any wrinkles or anything. But my skin, if I'm in the sun for even 20 minutes, I'm red. And I have sunspots and sun damage on my body, and I don't want that. But at the same time, I want to also get the vitamin D. So let's start with anything you want to answer in terms of either the emotional components to skin cancer or the technical stuff.
So much to say about everything you just said. So the first thing I would say is, when you find that you get sunburn easily, that might be an essential fatty acid issue. I'm assuming that you know enough to be doing more omega-3s than 6s at this point. But that's one thing that I think of, because it's kind of like an extra inflammatory reaction, and it may have to do with other dietary stuff. I don't know if you've ever had a terrain workup by any of Nasha's docs, but certainly looking at your terrain labs can help elucidate that. I've seen a lot of patients who have autoimmune conditions who have sun sensitivity. So I get what you're saying is probably more like a burn because you're fair skinned than it is sun sensitivity. But I think there's always overlap in these kind of ways, in very subtle ways that the conventional world doesn't look at because they're focused on pathology. And I'm so into the nuances of what the patterns of your blood work say, what your symptoms are symbolizing, ailments, what was it, messages from the body, right? So, and then in terms of cancer and skin cancer, I generally have followed the work of a Dr. Hammer. It was a German physician who had a son who was accidentally shot. And then after sitting by his bedside, him and his wife, for 3 months, he died. And within 3 months, both the mother and the father, Dr. Hammer, developed cancer, testicular and breast. And he thought, well, there are no coincidences here. Let me look into this. I got to figure this out. And as a physician, University of Cologne researcher, he started doing MRIs on people and started asking questions. What was going on in your life prior to your diagnosis? And there was always a story that he could make sense of. And it's fascinating. You can look up his work. There's a gazillion websites about his work now, even though he passed away, I think just about a year or 2 years ago. It's called the German New Medicine. And he has delineated thematic conflicts associated with different diseases, cancers, so both cancers and non-cancers, and what part of the central nervous system that those conflicts and those organs are associated to by looking at the MRIs and looking at what would happen when somebody resolved a conflict or the conflict would go away. He'd see a swelling in the brain and actually like a little sphere around the exact area in the brain. And he's got, I have all of his books too. There's pictures, fascinating. And I found his work in like 96. So I've been studying that, paying attention to that, all of these years that I was paying attention to all this emotional stuff. And I also did Gestalt training and just always known the emotional component, back to my mom's mom dying when she was 8. I'm always thinking about that. So this just blew my mind. And then I myself, my nemesis, or should I say my master, my teacher, is my skin. My whole life I've had eczema, or, what they might call eczema. I'm like, it's just a name, like whatever my skin does when it decides that my body needs to tell me a big fat message, namely about, skin in general is namely about separation, conflicts of separation, either having an issue being somebody leaving in your life, or wanting someone to leave, or having resolved a relationship that you wanted to end for a long time. There's so many variations on that theme of separation, but always think separation when you're thinking of just kind of basic skin issues. And then when it moves into cancer, and I'm really talking probably more about melanoma than I am talking about just basal cell or squamous cell carcinomas, which aren't as truly systemic, cancers that are going to metastasize like a melanoma would. Melanoma is really like a real cancer. And I'm amazed at how many people don't know that melanoma is a systemic disease. So I just want to make a point on that. I see a lot of patients that they even squeak through the cracks and get in here without going through our cancer process because they didn't tell anybody that they had been diagnosed with melanoma at one point. So melanoma is a lot more serious. Most people know that, if you don't get it removed quickly, but it's still a systemic disease. But skin cancer and the emotional component really has more to do with the feelings of being attacked in your integrity. So it's almost like the more deeply you go into the epidermis, into the dermis, the more the person feels devalued. They feel soiled. They feel dirty. They feel
Right. I actually looked it up when you said, because I thought, well, it doesn't have to say skin cancer. It can just say skin problems. So the way that this book is set up is he'll do like a little phrase to sort of like to make it shorter and then give an explanation. So the 3 that come up under skin problems, I hope I pass the audition. So there's when you're talking about being violated, it's almost like there's also a belief that I'm not good enough, that I've done something wrong, a bit of a shaming. And then, and of course, skin.
If I don't get the part, I wasn't good enough and they don't value me. Right.
And I'm not valuable. Yeah. And they don't value me. They don't see me.
So this goes back to the whole thing about limiting beliefs. Delusional beliefs is kind of a harsher way to put it, but that's like homeopathic terminology that you find in your repertories and all that when you're trying to find the remedies that help people to shift past these limited beliefs.
So now looking at that, and thank you for the omega-3. I definitely do take them. And yes, I know I've been in functional medicine for at this point, not 20 years, but close to it. And definitely I am laxing right now. I'm definitely not up to taking what I probably need to be taking right now. I took a couple of weeks off, but I will go right back to it.
Yeah. And you might be one of those people who has a SNP and you can't convert it and you need 2 to 3 times as much as the average bear. So you probably have looked at your epigenetics.
Well, I'm going to take a deeper look, but so let's talk about then the average person. So what about the people that let's put aside the emotional stuff for a second and talk about when, the population is being told to wear sunscreen or sunblock in order to block out the detrimental rays of the sun, which we know that if you don't get your vitamin D. But what would be your recommendation? Is it to never use sunscreen? Is it that some people do? Is it after a certain amount of time?
So what I suggest people do is, no matter your fairness of skin, always have at least 5 to 15 minutes in the sun. Like if, and remember that your vitamin D conversion stops when you take a shower and you wash the oils off your skin. So if people think, well, I'm a rock climber and I'm out there all day, I don't need to take vitamin D, and check their levels and they're in the toilet, right? So it may be because they always shower afterwards and they have those epigenetics where they can't convert vitamin D, they don't absorb it well, like all of those various issues, but they're really not getting what they need to get from the sun. There's that. So always get a little bit of sun exposure before you either step out of the sun, put on a covering, a hat, a shirt. And then in the circumstances where you really don't have a choice. So, last Friday, we're ending our vacation and we go to a water park on the last day. And I've got half Indian kids. So I almost never need to put sunscreen on my kids. Thank God. But the one time they got burnt was when we spent an entire day at a water park and my son was in the wave pool, right? Like water all around, reflecting on his skin, and he got sunburned. So being a little bit cautious, I always have an EWG verified brand with me that's going to be a non-nanoparticle, like titanium dioxide, like something that doesn't absorb through the skin. None of that PABA stuff, para-aminobenzoic acid. We don't want the toxic stuff. Look it up on the environmental working group, make sure that it's verified or at least a level 1. Badger, I think, is the brand that I had with me on vacation. I used it, maybe twice the entire.
It's so thick. I got it. I asked Dr. Chris, I got it. And I'm like, I can't use this. This is gross.
I know I don't really like using it either, but I was actually putting it on my hands because I was out in the John Muir wilderness and, riding horses, hiking. My hands were like sausages and they were just getting sun. And I thought, you know what? I just don't want them to be fried to a crisp. And so I would put it on my hands almost like a moisturizer. And it is kind of, if you get in the pool, it's kind of gone. You got to reapply it. But I mean, there's definitely direct damage, obviously, that can happen when you're in the sun way too long. So you need to take sun protection. Now, does that sun damage and repeated being burnt cause skin cancer? I can't say that I can get on board with that because number one, cancer is multifactorial. Number two, none of us is getting enough. None of us is, help me with my grammar here, JJ, so none of us are getting enough vitamin D, number two. Definitely. And then we're completely confused about what actually causes cancer. People don't even know that because nobody other than, the folks in our world are even looking. And when you really boil it down and you look at, you're killing yourself by eating glyphosate-ridden foods, and your microbiome is in, forget your microbiome. Well, you are your microbiome. Like, you're nothing but your microbiome. You're a bag of microbes in higher structured human order. And here we are popping pharmaceuticals that kill our mitochondria, which is, the microbiome that formed into a eukaryotic, higher organized cell to be our higher organism. And then your antibiotics and your steroids that completely disconnect you from your neuroendocrine system and your feeling states. So it's almost like hard to believe, right? Like, it's really obvious when you sit down and parse it all out, but there's so few people in the world that really know how to do that.
So we're looking at, this is what I heard you say. I don't want to simplify, if anyone, like, just to kind of make a really obvious separation. So the messages that we get, which is why we're having this conversation, because I know that, I think with all other cancers, I think that I and most people can get on board without thinking too hard that cancer doesn't happen overnight. But skin cancer becomes that one thing that we want to blame on the sun, and that the only reason we have it is because of sun exposure. So what we're talking about right now is that skin cancer is not just a result of being exposed to the sun. It's all the other things underneath that make that possible, correct?
Absolutely. And I just want to add here, JJ, while we can, because I know your audience loves these things. If you find yourself being one of those people, there may be something that, like, you're specifically not wanting to look at. Like, our medicine requires accountability, personal responsibility. And when somebody's not going there, that's a problem, right? Because you're not going to get well without that.
Right. So when we're looking at that, it's just about my relationship to the sun, just like in any other cancer. Oh, well, I know you talked about glyphosate. We can't get rid of toxins no matter what, unless we're living in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. But what we can do is make sure that our detoxification system inside of our body is good, to limit the exposure, to do things that we need to do to extract and prevent them from happening, change our products, change our water, change our environment. We can do a lot of things to avoid what is naturally occurring around us all the time. So it's the difference of, there are plenty of people in the world who eat like crap, who don't have, who complain and have stress, never get cancer, live to be 95, and are just fine. It's so, again, looking at all the reason why Nasha and the metabolic approach to cancer is different is all the different factors. Like you said, I may need, based on my epigenetics, I may need higher doses of omega-3 than the average person does in order for me to be out in the sun longer and not necessarily get any burns or, any skin discoloration, which I have. So I just want to say that it's not the one thing. It's not the one thing that you can say, everyone that does this one thing is going to have this result. Not at all. And then that's not even, and there's not even taking into consideration, again, what I'm going to consider quantum physics, which is above all of it, which is if you don't believe it's not going to happen, you live in alignment and you're actually a happy, settled person, all this bad stuff that affects other people won't affect you because you literally live in a different frequency. So when we change that, so going back to, because I think what I just got clearer than I've gotten before is my own lack of connecting skin cancer to all of the other things, which of course it makes complete sense. But because we're so pounded in advertising and marketing and doctors, other Western allopathic doctors, wear your sunscreen, wear your sunscreen, wear your sunscreen. People in the beauty industry, wear your sunscreen, wear your sunscreen, wear your sunscreen. Oh, I was in the sun too long, I now have cancer. And we automatically assume that there's no other reason except sun exposure. So what are some of the other big, and then this could be, obviously in the Terrain 10, there's 10 other things.
Well, let me talk about the two biggest things. The two biggest things, and I just want to say that, the Terrain 10 that Nasha talks about, she has the emotional, psychological, if you will, as the 10th thing. She has the last chapter of her book, because if people read it first, they might run. But I really kind of consider that the substrate for everything, number one. So, like, why do some people, you were like, some people eat like hell and they do all these things in their lives and they never get cancer? Well, if you kind of put it all together, there's usually, and Dr. Hammer called this a psychological shock. So, like, the event of his son getting shot and dying, he named that syndrome or that shock or that event after his son. He calls it a DHS for Dirk Hammer syndrome. But it's that there needs to be some kind of like psychological shock. And it may have been something that was subtle and repeated, and suppress and not really realize later in life. And that's why people got to kind of go digging in the closets and bring out the skeletons, right? And do that deep dive emotional work. So that's a substrate of anything. But when, if you're just talking like basal cell carcinoma, those types of, lesser noxious cancers, you can pretty much know that that person has had a long-standing vitamin D deficiency, ironically enough. They're probably slathering on their sunscreen, and there's going to be a metabolic issue. What does that mean, a metabolic issue? I often tell patients, when I say metabolic, think blood sugar. When I say blood sugar, think metabolic. Because what I'm really talking about is at the cellular level, your cells don't know how to stop using only glucose as fuel. Metabolic flexibility, another term out there in the world that everybody's using. But what is it that's causing all this metabolic problem? It's all of those things that are whacking out, knocking out, and killing our mitochondria, because your mitochondria, again, are the little microbes that were swallowed up by another microbe and then became the organelle to all of our cells, carrying their own DNA, that take your food and they convert it into utilizable like currency, ATP, right? And if you just eat glucose, or sugar, or, and mind you, we're not just talking about fruit and candy bars. We're talking about
bread,
beans,
pasta,
grains,
beans, all carbs,
all of those things, all carbs, anything that gets converted into glucose in the body is like equal currency. Of course, some of those foods have more other nutrients with them along for the ride, and many of them don't because they're just so high in carbohydrate. But anyway, the metabolic issue goes also back to the mitochondria being knocked out, not just by being exhausted from never getting a rest of burning glucose, but it's also they get knocked out by excessive exogenous hormone stimulation. And we'll have to have another podcast if we can't talk about that today. And then also other pharmaceuticals that kill your mitochondria. And there's also that whole like symbolic part of it, so if you circle it back around to the emotional connection, I have a quote on my website that has triggered some people before, because I think and I believe that cancer is that part of you from which your consciousness has disconnected. It's too painful. You can't go there. So you disengage, you dissociate, you disconnect. No, it's not just about consciousness and this, lofty kind of esoteric statement. It has to do with the fallout of all of that emotional trauma, and then the fallout of all of the physical manifestation that started from the thoughts and feelings, emotions.
Yeah, that's a lot. So and I'm in agreement, obviously, on the emotional piece, on all aspects of that. And I think, while I was really hesitant at first when Nasha and I talked, and she kind of introduced me to all you guys in an interview, and I was like, although I asked for it, I very much asked for it. I'm like, I'm going to claim 10. I'm going to claim this is my lane and that I want, because I've worked with all kinds of different healers, different energy workers, people that do different kind of trauma responses. But for me, I think what I'm even fine tuning now is that while all that does live in the body and we can find ways to release that and we can unburden the body energetically, we still have that 12% of our conscious brain, that's our interpreter. And until you change the interpreter, which causes the feelings in the first place, when we don't know how to look at something and interpret it differently, we're going to create it again. It's just going to be on repeat. You can clear out the energy, you can forgive, make peace with, bring it up, release energy, but you're going to cause it again if we're looking at it the same way. If we're telling the same story, if we don't have a different perspective, it's going to come again, because it's your point of view and what it means to you. So, but besides that piece with coming into this group, what I've realized is that cancer patients that are actually in alignment with this work, with what you guys do, and then with what I do, are the ones that are ready to do it. And not that everyone needs to feel uncomfortable or crack open or have some kind of really meltdown in a way, although you might. That's probably going to be appropriate for a lot of people, and learn how to be free and all that good stuff. But this is the population of like, when you get a terminal diagnosis, game on. You either want to live and figure it out, or you manifested this because you're ready to go and you're tired and you and you're ready to leave. Right. So I think that when you're talking about the emotional piece. Yeah. So I want to empower people that are listening to this who, like me, maybe they've been listening for a while. I do have plenty of listeners who've been with me. It's coming on 8 years, guys. 8 years, and know that sunscreen episode that I'm talking about back in 2015 with Dr. Elizabeth Plord. But again, it's been a while. So this is why it was time to bring this conversation back and to add this depth of, it's not just about what you're putting on your skin or your skin exposure, but what you're doing with your body. So let's start at the top and work inside. So obviously the best case scenario is to work with someone like you, work with you, do telemedicine, do the whole blood work, do the whole thing, and see all of the things. But if someone isn't going to do that, and we start with the topical, like you just said, do 5 to 15 minutes in the sun every day, hopefully that'll help with vitamin D. From there, what about, are we putting sunscreen or sunblock on? I know you have a store. Do you have some of those recommended products?
Sunscreens.
Yeah. Sunscreens.
Well, we don't actually carry any sunscreen. It's not something that, people think to buy from us. We don't really market stuff like that, but we do have an affiliate with an EWG verified makeup company called Beauty Counter. And there's a link to them on our website, and they do sell sunscreen. So we don't sell it directly, but through an affiliate relationship, which those never really work out for me. But if somebody wants to click on that, I'd be really happy.
Are you kidding me? They just heard Beauty Counter and Environmental Working Group approved. I am sure you will have some clicks.
Well, I'll be amazed, because I don't know what the deal is. We have our own store, but the affiliates just are always so I need to learn a little bit about that. But I like having things in our store, and I'd be happy to carry a sunscreen here if people think that they would use it. But we're in Cleveland, right? We're at a latitude where I don't even really want people wearing sunscreen. And that 5 to 15 minutes a day, that's probably not going to be enough. You're going to want to test vitamin D levels and see where they are, and know that our optimal ranges are going to be between 80 and 100. And you want to just keep an eye on serum calcium levels. That's part of your metabolic profile. Complete metabolic panels have that with all the other electrolytes. And when that number goes 9.5 and up, then we start thinking, okay, are you overdosing on the D, not getting enough vitamin K? So those fat soluble vitamins really kind of need to be thought of in sync with one another, including vitamin A. Yeah.
Okay. So we have, I'm a big fan of a liquid vitamin D with K. Even I'll supplement that because my levels weren't quite at 80.
Yeah. So we always separate the two because we're wanting to tweak the D and the K based on lab work. So we do sell that one together. In fact, we're looking for an alternative because we found out that the companies that we carry requires a certain mandate that we're not in cahoots with. So we're looking for a new brand on that. That'll be changing soon. And we're ever updating our apothecary to be ethically, morally clean, like that. It's a curated thing I've been doing for 20 years. And I got a couple other doctors now and staff that help me out and help us with the terrain lab reviews. But yeah.
Okay.
Just had to throw that out there.
No, yeah, there'll be a link under the video for Dr. Erin's store. So you can check out, and of course you can go to her website also.
We use emulsified forms of vitamin D because it helps with the absorption of the vitamin D. So sometimes people take vitamin D and their vitamin D levels they're supplementing with 10,000 international units a day, and they still have low vitamin D. And that may be the type of vitamin D that you're taking. It may be your epigenetics. That's something else that we assess and look at. But for sure, we recommend we use the D-Molgen from Genestra because it's an emulsified form. And there's certainly other hacks to help people absorb nutrients that comes to fat soluble nutrient metabolism and absorption, assimilation, all that. But I don't know how deep you want me to go.
Well, I'm trying to go
through the
causes
or the things that drive.
And if I'm listening to this and I go, what can I do? I was talking to Miriam the other day and she recommended something and I said, can I get it on Amazon? She's like, well, I'll make you a full script. I'm like, can I get it tomorrow? I'm like, no,
right. I mean, and let me comment on that, JJ, because you have a big audience and I want your audience, if they're in support of you and what you do, please don't shop on Amazon. You're giving your money to go to Mars for Mr. Bezos. Is that really what you want to be doing? this is a world where we have to co-create a new culture of healthcare, a system independent of the existing system. So unless you want to be a corporate hack, like consider the little guy. Like we're out here struggling and trying to figure out how to make money in a method of medicine that like, it's hard.
Well, that's why I have a lot of you on the show. I want people to know what the alternatives are.
I just want people, I mean, it's not like, I don't mean to be like a guilt trip for people, but I get it. I'm trying to, you know, break the Amazon like addiction and the dopamine, like, oh my God, I'm going to get it today. I'm going to get it tomorrow. But like, if you really don't need it by tomorrow, or you can spend like an extra $2, buy it from your local integrative, naturopathic, holistic doctor. Because do we want there to be one corporation? Amazon? Okay, I'm going to stop that rant.
Don't worry, I'm sure you're not the only one. There's a lot of people who are on that.
Feel that way. Yeah.
I'm not as on. I'm on that for a lot of other things. So I kind of reserve that one as I'm a little more flexible there. There's other things that I know we agree on that I'm more anti this or support of that, whatever. Sure. But you know, I have to be careful because I've already been censored twice. So I have to, so I already put my own company at risk often for speaking up against common misbeliefs about what's actually going on in the world. So
was that like a meta thing or like
YouTube? No, YouTube. YouTube. Yeah, I've had Dr. Christian Northrup on 4 times. Her last one was the one that got nixed. Anyway, so as I digress, so we're going, guys, make sure you check your vitamin D levels every time, every more than one time a year, get them up there.
Jumping ahead into the whole metabolic piece, like give your body a rest from eating every day for at least 13 hours. Like if that's the least you can do. And then if you want to take it deeper, you can do longer intermittent fast. We call that 16 to 18 hours every other day. Once a week, try to do a dinner to dinner fast. That's 24 hours. You know,
they're easy. They're easier than
maybe
you think.
Sip on bone broth. Maybe you have some bulletproof coffee, but like give your system a rest. And, you know, just to kind of throw something out there, I'm like to think of myself as a little more woke mother than others. We just went on this vacation. I mentioned my son ate gluten twice a day, bagels for breakfast, sandwiches for lunch, marshmallows and crackers for dinner, basically.
You were camping? Were you camping?
We were in the John Muir Wilderness glamping. I have to admit, we were at a ranch and we had a private chef, but we were in the middle of nowhere with no Wi-Fi and no cell phone service. It was fabulous. But you know, so my son comes home and he's all congested and he has a sore throat. And I'm like, oh, ate a little bit too much crap, did you? And then, you know, he stays home from camp yesterday, stays home from camp today. And today he's completely nauseated. And I'm like, oh, your liver's resetting. Your liver is like, all your liver energy is going, and I just explain it to him. And then he understands it. I'm giving him homeopathics for his liver. By, you know, an hour ago or whatever it was, and I'm trying to get him to my sister-in-law's house to get over here to the office. He's like, I'm fine. Because, you know, I'm not suppressing his little fever he had. I'm understanding that the fever is his immune system trying to find itself again after obliterating his gut with a ton of glyphosate-ridden gluten.
Right.
Just had to throw that out there for all y'all listeners.
Right. Oh, I remember with my last relationship, we would go to go for like a family dinner. Okay, let's say Thanksgiving one year, and I've been gluten free since 2008. And not to mention, forget that, I have a really high standard for food. So there's a lot of things I'm just not going to eat if they come out of a box or if they're not organic or if it's just
you're a foodie.
Yeah, right. So let's just say I don't eat a lot. And but we're on the same planes, we're in the same bed, we're in the same room, we're in the same houses, we're in the same cars. And then what always would happen is he'd get sick and I would not. And I was like, okay, if you don't know that your gut controls your immunity, like by now, like here's the proof every time that minus. Now I'll say, I mean, like when I was in Greece with Dr. Nasha, I mean, I did have a little gluten because I am Greek, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to have some spanakopita, and I'm going to say, oh, this isn't worth it. So I have it one time. Oh, I'm going to have some galdobulico, and then I'm going to go, oh, well, that's kind of worth it, but I'm going to limit it. Or when I was in Italy, in 2020, and but generally speaking, again, 80-20. I live 80% in that space. So I know you're talking about fasting. So I love that the 13 minimum hours intermittent fasting, which I've been doing for years. But now, like right now, as we're having this interview, I'm on the fasting mimicking diet. And I'm a big fan of the 24-hour fast, the 48-hour fast. I haven't myself yet done the 72-hour fast, but the 24 hours are easy.
Yeah.
They're way easier than you think, especially because you're literally just whatever dinner you're eating, you're just having dinner.
Yeah.
But so intermittent fasting is also, it can be really easy. 13 hours. I would say that if you're not able to do 13 hours, there's a problem. That's a big indication.
Absolutely.
Big problem if you
Big
can't
problem.
You are a huge sugar burner.
And if you think you're hypoglycemic, it's the same as being hyperglycemic. You're just bouncing around because your body doesn't know how to balance your blood sugar. So we can call it dysglycemia or whatever. But another way to kind of get through that hump, in addition to intermittent fasting, is going to be, don't count calories, count carbohydrates and increase healthy fats. Two really simple things you can do. If you don't know what a healthy fat is, send us an email. We'll send you our handout. We'll send you the handout, like, learn people that the vegetable oils and the canola oils and the crap in the grocery stores, give it the heave ho, because it's killing you. And you don't think that much of it. Oh, it's just the cooking oil. Well, guess what? It's your nutrition. And it's how your body learns how to burn fat when you actually eat decent oil in decent quantities. And, speaking of being grease, like, get yourself on some good quality, clean, organic olive oil. We do have an olive oil affiliate membership where you get 3 bottles fresh pressed every season from wherever they're being pressed in whatever season around the globe, FedEx to you. And it's the tastiest stuff ever. And it is expensive, but I think of it as a supplement because it's so anti-inflammatory. That particular type of monounsaturated fats and the nutrition that's in that, like, people don't realize that olive oil is medicine, food. It's one of your ways that, like, food is just a direct medicine. So
speaking of olive oil, I believe in that episode I did in 2015, I think we talked about putting olive oil on burns topically. If you were in the sun too long,
it makes complete sense.
Using olive oil on top.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I guess olive oil would probably be the better choice than coconut oil, but those would be two choices.
In terms of dietary, you mean?
No, topically, on top of your skin.
Yeah.
If you get a sunburn.
I would absolutely think that olive oil would be the more medicinal thing to use. We actually are carrying a lovely sea buckthorn oil straight from the Himalayas that's lovely for sunburns. So it's just 100% sea buckthorn oil. It comes in like a little dropper, and rubbing that on can be incredibly soothing for sunburn as well. And of course, if you're in a place that grows aloe, or you have an aloe plant, fresh aloe. Yeah, we were in Mexico actually with Nasha, and that my kids got a little sunburn on the beach. So maybe they've been sunburned twice. Okay, I confess I lied. But anyway, it was so funny because Nasha goes, "You need some aloe." And she looked around, and we were at this restaurant, and she ran over underneath this tree, and there was this gigantic aloe plant. And I'm like, did you just manifest that? Like, it was hysterical. She breaks it off and she opens it up and she's rubbing it all over my daughter. It's really cute.
Yeah, it's such a great, I live in a place where we have aloe too. I'm not growing it yet, but I plan to be definitely putting some. I'm still working on my landscaping. It's been a year. I'm building another house. It's like this whole crazy, you'd think you'd be done by now. I'm like, no, I have to surrender at every stage and be like, it's never done. Well, it hasn't even really started. You have no idea, but it's okay. It's all good. All right. So we've gone from what we do put on our face, what we do supplementally, or what labs we're looking at in terms of vitamin D being really important to make it sure that it's up, the fasting, reducing, obviously, is there another level, one more in to what we eat or what we do besides fasting, and obviously eating less?
So we kind of covered the big piece around the metabolism, but I definitely think there's something to be said for just general nutrition and that kind of common phrase these days, nutrient density. Like, what are you eating? Are you eating a salad of iceberg lettuce and like raisins and apples? Or are you eating a salad of like greens that you grew in your backyard of various species that have various nutrient profiles, or like herbs and, herbs with oil and garlic and radishes and asparagus and like, a million different vegetables, you see, like, you have to think about it. And then there's people like, oh my God, I hate those foods. I can't eat those things. And, because they grew up never eating them and their taste buds are completely acclimated to McDonald's or whatever it is. And you have to train yourself and like learn that this stuff actually can taste good. So one little like hack, if you will, dietary hack of people who don't eat vegetables is go buy some La Tangerelle from your neck of the woods, roasted walnut oil, and get yourself a good sea salt. A brand that I love is Herbamare, another thing that I'd love to sell and haven't figured that out yet. It comes from Europe, but you can get it on Amazon. And that, or, just a good quality sea salt. We do sell Celtic gray. That's what we recommend for all of our cancer patients and kidney and Hashimoto's and all those people that need good quality sea salt without iodine. Sea salt and walnut oil on salad or any vegetable, it's like so good. Like you don't even need a salad dressing. You don't need to buy a store-bought salad dressing with some crap, crappy oil, crappy, pressed, with heat. And there's so much we can talk about with fats, but
okay. I haven't tried the olive oil.
It's like a gateway salad dressing.
Well, it's funny because so when I started Fit to Love, it was a 6-day-a-week show, and there were 2 videos, Monday and Tuesday, and this Tuesday one was a cooking show. And so I do have 3 salad dressings, maybe 4 salad dressings video for those of you on YouTube under the Tasty Tuesday.
All right. I'm going to check it out.
Or under the easy.
Out a little.
Yeah. So I do have some salad dressings on there, so you can check that out. And, but I agree. Okay. I'm going to try that because I actually have been looking for a reason to have walnut oil because I'm like, what am I going to put it on? So put it on,
and it's cook. You can cook with it. It has like a high smoke point too. So.
Okay. Well, I'm going to buy myself some walnut oil. Okay. Obviously there's more to talk about, but let's talk about if someone wants to work with you on any of these issues, you do telemedicine, correct?
Yes. We work with people globally all over the place. We have great shipping and I have a whole team to support me, 2 other docs. I'm a little difficult to get into. I technically only see new cancer patients, but I have a soft spot for people who need help. And I have 2 other doctors, one who did 3-year residency with me. She's now in her 4th year of practice, and another doctor who also, both of them have done Dr. Nasha's metabolic terrain for practitioners program. So the other doctor has been in practice for like 5-6 years, and he has been with us for a year. It's Dr. Patrick. So Dr. Patrick and Dr. Laura, they're sort of like my wingmen in helping people because I'm not always immediately available, but they're trained naturopathic physicians. And so they have that whole therapeutic philosophy. Love to send people to this concept of principles of healing on my website. You can go search that because I tell every new patient, you got to understand this. But if you want to work with us and like you can either just go on our website and schedule like a 10-minute Right Fit consult. You can go on and you can just schedule right on our website. If you're not sure and you want to ask more questions, there's ways on our website to say, hey, contact me. Like we're pretty on it. We're growing. We're about to hire 2. We just are hiring 2 people, even 3 people right now. And we got a lot going on, but our goal is to really help people get well and to change that culture of healthcare and help people understand that it doesn't have to be the way that you think it has to be. And that's why I call my business Options, because you have choices.
Options Naturopathic.com is the website. Again, it's below this video. It's in the show notes for this podcast. Dr. Erin, thank you so much for all of today's conversation. I mean, we kind of weaved in and out of so many things, but I now feel much better about the whole skin cancer conversation, if you will, because I don't know why I had a block to the fact that just like any other cancer, it doesn't happen overnight, and it isn't. And the sun is not the only part of this equation. So stop thinking that it's about the sun. The sun is one element, but there's so many other things that contribute to whether or not sun exposure can create a skin cancer problem. So I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. Everyone, please check out Options Naturopathic. And what was the download that you said for people to get?
The download?
Did you say you said get your hands on some report?
Oh, it was the healthy fats handout. And yeah, we can just send that to you too. And you can like put it somewhere. Do you do that kind of thing?
I can. Yes, I can.
All right. Absolutely.
All right. So, okay. Healthy fats handout, but I feel like there was one more thing you said that you wanted people to get their hands on, that it was some guide. Did you have a guide?
Well, we do that mind, body, temperament balancing program. Maybe that's what you were thinking about. It's like a way for people to start to work on any kind of physical issue or mental, emotional issue, because that's why I call it mind body. In fact, I have that scrunched together as one word because your mind and your body aren't really separate. Guess what, everybody? It's all the same thing. So the mind, body, temperament balancing is really helping people kind of segue into how do I start to help myself heal? Because everything really begins with consciousness, thought, feeling. It always goes back to that, even if it was in a previous generation. Transgenerational trauma is a thing.
Inherited emotional DNA is a thing.
Right. So that really dives deep into that. And I mean, if there was something else, I mean, maybe you're thinking about the German medicine or the book that like I use.
All right. So Dr. Erin, thank you so much. Please, everybody, make sure you visit Options Naturopathic Clinic at optionsnaturopathic.com. Also, she's on Instagram. So follow her on Instagram. I know, because you shared some of my stuff that I was doing. So I appreciate that. We're definitely of like mind. So,
Yes.
And if you're looking for someone in person, I don't want to forget to mention that you're in Ohio.
I'm in Cleveland, and Dr. Laura is now in Portland, Oregon.
Okay, great. So we have two different, in case you want to do an in-person session, you want to go see a doctor. We're talking about Cleveland, Ohio, or Portland, Oregon, which is great to know, because I know a lot of you would love to just be able to go meet people and meet with them in person. So just make sure to let her know that you heard about her on my show, so she knows where it came from, and she kind of knows a little bit about what you know about her. Yeah. And thank you so much for all of your amazing information. And I'm sure we'll be having another conversation soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much, JJ.